Jo from Cedar Quilts with a quick tip Tuesday. We're talking about leader grips today, and this is a process for attaching. I use it just for my backs of the quilts, but you can use it in a number of ways. But I'm going to show you how I use them. So in the past, I would pin my backs onto my leaders and both front and back, and then I oftentimes would end up poking myself and bleeding onto my leaders and things like that. All those little dots, that's blood. But now I use these handy dandy plastic clips, and it's a two-part system. If you can see down here, there's a plastic rod that fits into the hem of the leader, and it scoots in there, and then there's a C-shaped plastic clip that clips over the end, and it snaps on there and it holds everything. The system I have came with 2 long and 2 short clips for both the back of the quilt and the front of the quilt. And when I first have my backing sitting on here, I check to see how many of these do I need to get from end to end. Oftentimes I only need 3 of them. I'm going to use 2 long and 1 short. And then there are some little tiny pieces as well, and these come in really handy. They're the same as the big clip, but they're just little ones for holding things. Once I know how many pieces I'm going to use, then I get this all ready to go. I use magnets quite often for holding all sorts of things, and I really like these big long heavy ones I have, just holding things in place so the fabric doesn't slide away. And then I just make it kind of nice and straight along here, and I'm just holding those magnets there just to hold everything in place. And then I'm going to bring my leader onto here, and I'm going to place it the magnet width, which is about 1 inch away from the border, from the selvage edge here. And I leave my selvages on my back sides whenever possible because I know they're not going to stretch and they're going to be nice and straight and true to grain. And so it's all just very helpful. Okay, and now I'm going to clip a couple of spots with these little tiny ones. Once I have that in place, I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to wrap this over. This is going to go on here, so I'm just going to put my little edge piece on here and my edge piece on here. And then I start on one end of these and I just snap them into place. The first time you use this, they're kind of tight, but after you've used them once or twice, they are just wonderful. And again, I'm going to clip this just for a moment to hold it in place nicely. And then I'm going to take that off because I'm going to use it on the other end. And that first little one is just to hold the same width of fabric on. And when I get close, I'm going to take that off and finish snapping that on there. Okay, and my back is now attached, and I can start rolling it up. And it's all nicely in place. It's pretty handy. So I wind up most of the back of the quilt onto one bar, and then I'm going to worry about the other side. If there's no fabric on these roller bars, the fabric slips really easily. If there's a little bit of this leader on here, it gives just enough pressure as it's rolling through that it helps hold things nicely while you keep getting rid of any of the wrinkles as you go. But now that I'm close, I want just a little bit of the leader fabric here, and then I'm going to adjust this so that it's nice and square and even, and I have a nice even amount of tension on the top here. And then I'm going to do some final adjustments, get it just close enough that I've got, about a hand's width here. And then I'll show you how I flip it and use my magnets again. So as I was saying, I use a lot of magnets. Some of them are really long, big ones, and then some of them are just some little ones, and you can find all kinds of different magnets to use. But these long ones I used to use, but oh my goodness, they are so strong. It's really kind of hard to get them off there, so you have to turn them sideways to get them off. Don't put two of these together, especially not with your fingers in the way, because they will get pinched. But I've found that I like a slightly smaller magnet better, and I have these bumps on my roller bar facing away from me, and I'm going to just put this on the bottom of the bar, not on the top or the side, because you want gravity to be your friend, and gravity is going to make these want to go to that side anyway, to the bottom. So I just put them from the bottom right away, just in about 3 spots, just enough to hold it so that I can wrap the fabric around to the top with some pretty good tension here. And then I can flip my leader up, and hopefully I'm close. Oh, and I just happen to be really close here. I want just enough fabric from my back to wrap around. And on this particular back, I have plenty of extra length. So I just want to make sure that I can wrap about 1 inch all the way across. If things aren't perfectly square, I might have a little excess on one end, and it might be a little shorter on the other end, but it should be fairly close. But yeah, this is going to work well. And so now once again, I'm going to take probably 3, maybe all 4, but about 3 pieces of the C shape and make sure it all fits on here pretty well. Yep. And try to make sure that I'm not splicing exactly where my rods are spliced. And we should be good. I'm going to move that all down just a wee bit more so I'm off of that splice, because that's important. So once I think I have everything pretty well nice and even and tight, I'm going to put my short clips on just to hold the fabric in place. I want my leader bar extended out, and I want that blue rod on the inside all the way out to the end, so that when I put this on, I don't have any little extra wrinkles and crinkles, and you just snap these on. They're really pretty handy. And by having a little one on either end, it holds that fabric in place nicely. So now that I'm done with this one, I'm going to move it and use it to the end. And again, I just want to have my leader out fairly straight, not a lot of tension. I don't want to pull and stretch anything, but I just want that to be on there pretty straight. And then again, snap everything on. And when I get right out to the end, move that out the way there. Good, and now I can come back down to this end and repeat the process. Now where those blue rods meet up, I need to make sure they are end to end without too much gap in between. And again, pull my leader kind of taut and my fabric kind of taut, and put an end on here. And I'm going to be a little close on there, so I'm going to take that one off as well. And now I can snap these on. This one has not been used as much as most of the other ones. This one's still a little tight. The first time or two you use these C-clips, they are a little snug, but after you've used them a couple times, then they are perfect. But that one was a little snug, so that was a new one. And then I take my magnets off, and I check to see if everything looks pretty straight. You might need to do a little bit of adjusting, just as with any attachment systems. Oh, it's perfect. It's almost always perfect, but sometimes I have to readjust a little bit. If it's off just a little bit, you can wind to the front and wind to the back and wind to the front and wind to the back a couple of times, and that usually evens everything out. But yeah, these leader grips are so nice. It's really quick and easy to load it back. Now, Even though my tension is really nice on here, there are some things I want to teach you. This is important, especially if you're kind of new to long arm machine quilting. In a perfect world, you'd think everything that starts square would stay square, but there are lots of factors and lots of options as to why things aren't perfectly square. I'm going to show you something. All right, so if you look over here, I have, you know, a little bit of fabric here. I have very little fabric down here. I have just the selvage showing. And then when I'm on this end, there's a good inch or so of fabric above the selvage in order to make everything smooth and pretty on the back. You want your backs to get loaded nice and smooth. You don't want extra. If you had an extra inch here and this was sagging, you're going to end up with all kinds of wrinkles and crinkles on your back when you are stitching away and you're making all your pretty designs, and then you look from the back, there's wrinkles and folds in here. This is very important. The prep work is important. So when I was stretching everything out and I was pulling it over, I was making this flat. I wasn't worrying about the edges matching up square and perfect. I was worrying about keeping the surface tension flat. And so you might be off a little bit. You might be off all the time because your leader has stretched a little bit and so now it's a little bit wonky, or maybe one of your bars has bent a little bit, or you've, you know, gotten a bend in your, whatever, it doesn't matter. Maybe it was how you pieced your back. It doesn't matter. The thing that matters is that your back is as flat and square as possible. This is another reason why you need your backs to be bigger than the top of your quilt. If you had just precisely an inch extra here, look at this. As you wind this up, you start it over here, and as you're winding, it kind of creeps over, and now we've lost almost an inch of fabric here. You need your backs to be wider than what your quilt is, because you have to have that flexibility. It's a puzzle. I love the puzzle. But if you give yourself enough back to float your top and stay in the middle, it doesn't matter if it's off just a little bit, especially if you use a wide back or if you're really careful how you piece your backs. So anyway, that was an important thing. So another teachable moment here, especially if you're fairly new to long arm quilting. When you have a rack system like this where it's holding everything and you're moving your machine, there are some things that get in the way. So if you look at how much space there is, now granted this is just the back, it's not the batting and then the top of the quilt, but when you're sewing there's very little space in between here, about 1/4 of an inch. Same thing all the way along here. There's very little space between the machine and the bar. And now you're going to have the whole sandwich of the quilt in here. So these little things that can get in the way are very important. Do you see this little button over here on the bar, holding the bars together? These little buttons, if they're pointing down, they get in the way. Can you hear that? It's bumping into that little button. So you always want to make sure that you keep these buttons pointing away so they're not in the way. Same thing with the one back here. You want to be careful about these buttons. Same thing about your gripper leader clippers, or if you use big fat-headed pins. Any of those things can get in the way. And sometimes when you're stitching along, making your pretty designs, and all of a sudden there's some restriction here somewhere. It might be one of these other incidental things. So make sure that your grippers aren't in the way of the back of your machine, because that will cause you to lose an extra 1/2 inch or an inch up front here where you're stitching. If it's underneath, again, that's going to get in the way. See how I can't even pull it? I can't even pull it through. So I always take my machine all the way off the quilt if possible before I adjust and advance the rest of the quilt, because those little things can be in the way. So anyway, just another thing to keep in mind. Yeah. And anyway, then I'm going to put my batting on here, and I float my tops, stitch them up on the top, and it works really nicely for me. So anyway, hope this tutorial was helpful for you. Come back and see me again. Toodaloo.